Developing right now on Morning News Now, a state of emergency in Indiana. This morning, the waters begin to recede in deadly flooding that left entire neighborhoods underwater after days of severe weather. Meanwhile, in Hawaii, now Tropical Storm Lala lashing the Big Island, leaving tens of thousands of people without power. And the threat isn't over yet. We're tracking the conditions, the dangers, and what you can expect as you start your work week. Breaking overnight, Hollywood in mourning over the death of actor Hayden Panettiere as we learn new information from police. Plus, beachgoers beware. Health officials sounding the alarm on a dangerous flesh-eating bacteria that's claimed the lives of at least 5 people. What doctors want you to know. And romance and finance. That's right, forget the 5 love languages. Many couples are opening up about issues when it comes to talking about money. More from a new survey and why experts say regular financial discussions are the key to a healthy relationship. Get you some tips sort of about how to handle that and why you should.
We keep talking about how often they don't talk about that. That creates problems down the line.
Exactly.
So important to communicate about it early on. Good morning. Good to have you with us on this Monday. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. We're going to begin this hour in the Midwest with the aftermath of the deadly flooding that has swept through Indiana. The water is finally starting to recede this morning after several days of torrential rain that brought intense flooding. Some parts of the states got hit with over 2 inches of rain per hour.
As of last night, the state has seen 7 storm-related deaths. Hundreds more were forced to evacuate their homes as the rising waters ripped apart roads and bridges. Now the extent of the damage is starting to be revealed. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa on the ground again for us, this time in Indianapolis with the latest. Maggie, good morning.
Hey, Joe, Savannah, good morning. So you can see there's still standing water. There's still flooding in this area. But I got to tell you, this has receded drastically overnight. Like where I'm standing right now, this was completely submerged just 12 hours ago. And all of that, of course, paving the way for a long cleanup process. Now, Indiana state officials say this last historic week of storms and flooding took at least 7 lives here in the state. And we've seen firsthand it just left a stunning path of destruction, swallowing entire neighborhoods in Indianapolis, wiping out a bridge in nearby Carmel, and just destroying homes. Our team witnessing countless rescues by boat. First responders even ordering residents out of a nearby apartment complex on Sunday after floods destroyed the road around it. It follows a week's worth of storms that turned deadly across multiple states. Among the victims here in Indiana, 19-year-old Matthew Morey. Family confirms that search crews found his body in the raging Mississinawa River on Saturday, days after the incoming Purdue freshman, who was just days away from starting his freshman year, jumped off a bridge with friends. Family believed they just wanted to go swimming and underestimated the current. Now, President Trump over the weekend greenlighting FEMA aid for people here in Indiana. We've talked to a lot of people across the state who didn't have flood insurance and their homes were flooded. Among those who did have that insurance, some of them telling us they've now realized it doesn't cover a lot of their possessions. So suffice it to say, that government aid is definitely needed here. Joe, Savannah.
No doubt, Maggie Vespa, thank you.
Well, in Hawaii, Hurricane Lala battered Maui and the Big Island over the weekend. It's since been downgraded to a tropical storm. Now, despite the fact that it never made landfall, Lala's hurricane force winds toppled trees and blocked roads. The storm even dumped 3 feet of rain in some spots over the weekend. NBC News national correspondent Morgan Chesky is in Hawaii with the latest.
Lala's damage coming into focus after lashing Hawaii's Big Island. The eye of the storm passing 30 miles off the island's southern coast, dumping feet of rain and hitting coastal areas with dangerously high surf. Teams rescued a woman from a tree after a flash flood swept her home away. Video shows floodwaters surging in front of this house. Hawaii National Guard saving 2 paramedics trapped inside their own truck.
Taking down the sign.
Before it, too, was washed away.
The trash can's moving.
All that water wreaking havoc island-wide. From a drenching that felt non-stop.
There's rushing water, there's debris, and there's boulders on the road, and it's dark.
Oh my God.
The storm so strong, the current washed out this road, taking down trees with it. In Hilo, water churning under this bridge, and drone video capturing roads completely submerged. The highest rainfall total from this storm, more than 42 inches along the Big Island's northeast coast. Winds there reaching more than 70 miles an hour, ripping roofs off buildings. Lala downgraded to a tropical storm as hundreds of thousands go without power. Just south of Hilo in Mountain View, Wendell Causey and his family working to clear roads of downed trees.
What were you telling the grandkids as this one moved in?
Yeah, they kept asking, is this the storm? Is this the storm? Yes, but trying to keep it so that it's not so scary.
After losing their home to Hurricane Iniki in 1992, the family grateful to have survived a rare second Hawaiian hurricane.
In the meantime, we're also hearing from state officials who say that there are limited reports of any injuries and no reports of anyone missing. We'll send it back to you.
All right, Morgan, thank you.
We are tracking the latest on Tropical Storm Lala as it continues to impact the Hawaiian Islands. We've also got more on the ongoing flooding in the Midwest.
NBC meteorologist Dylan Dreyer joins us now with the Morning News Now weather. Hey, Dylan.
Good morning. Lots of weather going on. So let's focus in the flood watch. And we did have some flash flood warnings in this part of the country, including West Virginia, stretching up into Indiana, over into Illinois. And it's more because of the river flooding. They are at or above flood stage. So the orange dots here where we're seeing some minor flooding off the banks of those rivers. But some areas of red, especially in and around Indianapolis, is where we do have moderate flooding. So low-lying areas close to those rivers still have the threat of some of that flooding. As for severe storms today, there's an area across the upper Midwest and also through the southeast into the Carolinas where we could see large hail and damaging winds as these storms continue to push eastward and kind of pop up around the area. Same goes for tomorrow, too, including Omaha over into Iowa, even just north of Chicago where we could see some of those stronger storms. Additional rainfall about 1 to 2 inches. But again, it doesn't take a lot of rain to exacerbate some of the flooding that we're seeing off those rivers in especially Indiana. Let's focus on Tropical Storm Lala now. This was the hurricane that just rocked Hawaii. Now most of the wet weather with it and the wind is out over the water. This is going to become less and less of a threat. Even though it should re-strengthen into a Category 1 hurricane, it is no longer a threat to land. Heat is going to be a big story in the southwest, also in the southeast. Not just the heat, but the humidity too. Heat indices will be well above 100 degrees. Memphis will feel like 111 today. And this is going to continue, unfortunately, all week long. Atlanta's going to feel like 99 tomorrow. 110 is your feels like temperature in Pensacola. And here you go. We're looking at those triple digit temperatures over in Waco, Baton Rouge, close to it. But when you factor in the humidity, this is what it's going to feel like. And that just takes you to Friday. This weekend, not a whole lot of relief with the heat and the humidity sticking around. Back to you.
All right, Dylan, thank you so much. Well, now to some devastating news out of Hollywood. Actor Hayden Panettiere, known for her roles in the television shows Heroes and Nashville, has died, according to a statement released by her father. She was 36 years old. In a statement, police in Greenville, South Carolina, said they responded to a call about an unresponsive female yesterday afternoon. EMTs gave her medical assistance, but she was pronounced dead at the scene. Officials said there were no signs of foul play or suspicious circumstances. A cause of death has not been given, and an investigation is ongoing.
Panettiere revealed earlier this year that she had struggled with postpartum depression and addiction, which led to her decision to give up custody of her daughter back in 2018. She recently published a memoir called This Is Me, A Reckoning, detailing past relationships and the grief of losing her brother 2 years ago. In a statement, her father, Skip, said, quote, "She was an incredible light and a force of nature who brought immeasurable love and joy to all who knew her and to the millions who watched her on screen." We're thinking of her family at this time. Turning to news out of Washington, President Trump's newly confirmed attorney general appeared on Meet the Press over the weekend, where he faced tough questions about his working relationship with the president. AG Todd Blanche was pressed on whether the Department of Justice would act independently of the White House. Meet the Press moderator Kristen Welker has more. Kristen, good morning.
Good morning, Joe and Savannah. This week on Meet the Press, I spoke with President Trump's former personal lawyer and newly sworn-in Attorney General Todd Blanche about whether the Justice Department will maintain its independence under his leadership. Should the president have a voice in individual prosecution decisions at all?
Every American has a voice in prosecutions. I mean, we hear from Americans all the time. As a matter of fact, many of our investigations start with an American citizen coming forward and saying they saw something. And so whether President Trump should have a, quote, voice, it depends.
Would you take his opinions into consideration when he says, I think this case should be revived? Will you take that into consideration?
So hold on. Will I take the President of the United States' view on something into consideration? Yes. Of course. And I hope every attorney general in history would not answer that question differently. Just let's play that out. The president of the United States, the elected president of the United States, says something to me, and I'm supposed to say to you, I would say, nope. I mean, that's not the way it works. Now, the president is extraordinarily, every day he wakes up with one mission, which is making this country better. And as it relates to me, making this country safer. So if he has a view on that, he talks about it on social media. He talks about it when he speaks to the American people. That's certainly something that I listen to.
I'm asking in part because we did see this clash play out in his first term. Bill Barr, the attorney general during President Trump's first term, did push back against President Trump in 2020. As you recall, he told him his election claims were detached from reality. If you were faced with a similar situation, something that you did not think actually met the standard, the legal standard in your mind, would you stand up to the president?
I mean, so I will always stand up for what's right. And I do not, the president does not expect any of his leaders, including me, to just say yes to him no matter what he says. And so, of course, there's vigorous back and forth with every cabinet member in the president of the United States, which is exactly what President Trump expects.
You can see my full interview with Attorney General Blanche at meetthepress.com. You can also get more Meet the Press right here on NBC News Now every weekday at 4 p.m.
All right, Kristen, thank you.
Well, in political news, while Democrats are focused on winning the midterms, they're already making moves in the next race for the White House.
The DNC formally approved the state of South Carolina to once again lead the presidential primary calendar. They also chose 5 other states to follow the Palmetto State in a lineup designed to set up a very different path to the nomination.
NBC News political reporter Megan Brand joins us now with that and more. Hey, Megan, so how does this new primary calendar shift the presidential race for Democrats beyond just geography?
Hey guys, good morning. So one of the big differences here is the difference in demographics in the state. So the first state to go is South Carolina, and there is a large number of black voters there. And then the second state to go is Nevada, and there's a large number of Latino voters there. And so one of the big differences is that historically, Iowa and New Hampshire are the first 2 nominating states. Both of them are predominantly white states. You can see on your screen that New Hampshire is going 3rd after Nevada, but Iowa has been moved entirely out of that early nominating slew of states there. And so in that sense, it's a big change in terms of demographics moving forward. And so we're going to see a lot of early voting, a lot of early presidential candidates heading to those 6 states, as opposed to the typical states of Iowa and then New Hampshire.
And not seeing Iowa on that list is certainly going to be a huge change this year. Megan, let's shift to some foreign policy news. President Trump now says that he's directed the Defense Department to scale down joint military exercises with South Korea. That is a longtime ally. The U.S. has more than 28,000 troops stationed in that country. What more do we know about that decision?
Yeah, so President Trump made this announcement in a Truth Social post where he pointed to a couple of reasons. One was what he referred to as his very good relationship with Kim Jong-un, the North Korean dictator. He wrote that these exercises are not only costly, but he wrote that they also send a signal that that is totally inappropriate and hostile to a country that he says, as long as he's been president, has been unthreatening and respectful, referring to North Korea. He also pointed in that Truth Social post to South Korea declining to get involved in that war with Iran. And this announcement came just hours before the exercises between the U.S. and South Korea were supposed to start. And it was a significant post because South Korea is a close ally to the U.S., guys.
Megan, let's also talk about the war in Iran and specifically gas prices. They are still, of course, higher than usual. The national average for a regular gallon of gas once again is back up over $4. That is more than $1 since the war began. But President Trump, he did comment on these prices over the weekend, something he's been asked about quite a bit. What's he saying now?
Yeah, so he defended those gas prices, basically making the argument that it was a price to pay for what he referred to as he believed to be necessary U.S. military actions against Iran, saying again over the weekend that he believed that those U.S. military actions against Iran were necessary in order to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. So he made these comments during a speech in Long Island in New York over the weekend on Friday, actually. Take a listen to what he had to say.
For you to pay a tiny little bit more for your gasoline. Just remember, you're doing it so that a very evil country cannot have a country. Really, it's the #1 state sponsor of terror in the world. We don't want to have them have a nuclear weapon. So remember that when you have to pay a little bit more, you're at $4. It's okay. I mean, it's I'll never apologize. I did the right thing.
Now the national average gas price stands at $4.06. That is up from just under $3 when the war began. And Joe and Savannah, gas prices and the overall cost of living are consistently a top election issue, and the midterms are right around the corner now, guys.
All right, Megan Brand, thank you so much.
Staying with the war in Iran, the Pentagon is now pushing back against criticism from service members and their families about the living conditions on board U.S. Navy ships deployed in the Middle East. NBC's Julie Sirkin has the details.
Concerns about another carrier ship in the Middle East, with U.S. Naval Forces Central Command denying a new report of a supply crisis on the USS Boxer. A family member telling the left-leaning Midas Touch News that women have run out of feminine hygiene items, writing they were begging us to send products, but none got delivered. Navy CENTCOM calling the claim false, adding the ship is fully equipped and has had 2 major deliveries this month. A social media account for the ship posting these photos showing Marines and sailors distributing fresh deliveries, writing stocked, supplied, ready. It comes after service members on the USS Abraham Lincoln reported dealing with poor conditions, a longer than usual deployment, and low morale, according to their relatives. President Trump and the Pentagon dismissing it all.
No, they're not.
On Saturday, the U.S. Admiral overseeing the war effort visited the Lincoln, according to Central Command. Admiral Brad Cooper on board the ship as it prepares to make the journey home. The USS George Washington to be deployed in its place. Senator Ruben Gallegos says he communicated with the spouse of a service member on the Lincoln, who reports the issues are ongoing.
She was sharing with me text messages that her husband was forwarding to her, as well as pictures. You're going to have problems with retention once people get back and families start meeting again.
Key Senate Democrats are pressing the Pentagon for answers. In a new letter to Secretary Pete Hegseth, all 13 Democrats on the Armed Services Committee asking what led to food and water shortages, broken plumbing, and mental health crises severe enough that multiple sailors reportedly attempted to go overboard, and asking for a clear timeline for the crew's return. Julie Sirkin, NBC News.
Well, here in New York, Luigi Mangione pleaded guilty in a federal court on Friday to stalking charges in the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Going into detail for the first time, Mangione told the judge how he carried out a plot to kill Thompson while slamming the healthcare industry.
Legal questions are now mounting about whether Mangione's state murder case will even proceed. Minutes after Friday's hearing wrapped up, Mangione's legal team filed a motion in state court to have his second-degree murder charge dismissed. They're arguing it's double jeopardy. Well, that outcome is far from clear. Prosecutors are promising to pursue the toughest sentence for Mangione.
We have consistently pursued the maximum penalties under the law as necessary and just punishment for these crimes. The result achieved today now allows our office to seek the maximum penalty allowed, life imprisonment, which, as I've conveyed to Mr. Thompson's family, is what we intend to seek.
NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos joins us now to talk through all this. Danny, good morning. So let's start right there. That the crimes there, sentencing for those crimes is December 18th. And we just heard prosecutors, they're pushing for this life imprisonment. Is that a typical punishment for stalking charges in a case like this?
Well, as you can imagine, life is the maximum term of imprisonment for this crime. And prosecutors can push for that and get it. And normally I would be telling you, look, the statutory maximum in a federal case is nowhere near what a first-time offender would get. But given Mangione's sentencing guidelines, they're already going to be up around 24 to 30 years. And really the next level after that is life. So it's going to be a close call no matter what. Whereas ordinarily, I wouldn't say it would even be close to life for a first-time offender. But there are a lot of aggravating factors. For example, the homicide involved jacks up the sentencing guidelines. So federal prosecutors really have an outside shot at life in this case. And I would be surprised if the judge wasn't thinking the same thing.
Okay, now we have the state case. Mangione facing those second-degree murder charges in state court. The trial slated to start soon, September 8th. As we mentioned, his attorneys filed that motion to dismiss it on the grounds of double jeopardy. We've been talking about this. This might be the reason he was pursuing the plea deal for the federal case in the first place. But walk us through New York's double jeopardy provision. It's been described as expansive, as broad. Could it be this expansive that that state case essentially gets thrown out?
Right. We're not talking about federal double jeopardy because it's long been the case that dual sovereigns, two kingdoms, the federal government and the state government, can prosecute crimes separately. So the federal double jeopardy clause is not even at play here. You're correct, Joe. It's New York's broader statutory double jeopardy protection, which says that there can be no subsequent prosecution for something arising from the same transaction. Now, even that has some gray area, and expect the DA to argue, hey, the stalking was the federal crime. That happened before the killing, although the stalking includes the killing as one of the elements. But the state crime was murder, and that happened in about 7 seconds on that fateful night. Therefore, Judge, these are different crimes, and New York's double jeopardy clause does not apply. Strangely enough, Luigi Mangione's team has a really good shot on this front. Their other argument about the prosecutors colluding, that's not really going to fly. It's really going to be New York's state double jeopardy statute. And really ask yourself, is this the same transaction, the federal and the state case?
So what would Mangione's team need to prove to avoid the state trial?
They would have to show that these two prosecutions, the first federal prosecution and the second state prosecution, arose from essentially the same transaction. And the case law is on their side. In other words, you can't take the same killing generally. This is what the courts have said in New York. You can't take one killing and extract from that two different kinds of prosecutions. Now, very interesting, Savannah. The reason Mangione raced in surprised to plead in federal court is that had this happened in reverse, had the state case gone first and then the federal case, that New York state statute would have had no effect on a federal prosecution because the federal government can say, I don't care what your New York statute is. We're the federal government. We do things our way.
So for Mangione, I mean, this was essentially a gamble. Let's say, for the sake of discussion, he does end up facing the state trial. He just confessed in federal court to the killing of Thompson. How does that complicate things? Can you keep the jury from even hearing about that confession?
This is a massive, risky gambit, Joe. You are exactly right. Once you plead guilty, there is nothing more admissible against you, at least as to the same crime, essentially. So you're right. I mean, in many ways, Mangione has totally foreclosed any shot, even if his New York trial goes to trial. That's why this is a risk. And you may say, well, what's it matter if he gets life in the federal case and whether or not the state trial goes forward? Well, that's the life of criminal defense. You chip away and good things happen. That's why I've been said a lot of favorable things about Mangione's defense team. He will likely end up convicted in both cases, although he's got a good shot at getting some of the charges, the top charges in the New York state case, dismissed. But Mangione will probably spend most of the rest of his life, if not his whole life, in prison. And this defense team still did a really good job.
All right, Danny Savalos, thank you. We are back with a new push by the Trump administration to end the war in Gaza. President Trump's son-in-law and envoy, Jared Kushner, is in the Middle East trying to jumpstart the next phase of the president's 20-point peace plan. Kushner met with Hamas leaders in Egypt yesterday for the first time since the Gaza agreement was reached last October. NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley is in Tel Aviv with the details for us. Matt, good morning. So what have we learned so far about Kushner's meeting with Hamas leaders yesterday?
Hey, good morning, Savannah. So this was kind of an unprecedented meeting. It's thought to be the highest level delegation from the U.S., the son-in-law of President Trump, Jared Kushner, to meet with a senior Hamas official. Now, there have been contacts, of course, between Hamas and the U.S. The U.S. helped to mediate Hamas's deal, the Cairo agreement, back in October of 2025 to try to end the war in the Gaza Strip. But this looked like a pretty consequential meeting, and it looked as though Jared Kushner met with Dr. Khalil al-Hayya. He is the newly minted head of Hamas, newly elected to that position. Nikolai Mladenov, who is the head of President Trump's Board of Peace, just below President Trump himself, who really leads the Board of Peace. And former Prime Minister of Britain, Tony Blair, who is also one of the executive board members. They were also, reportedly, according to Hamas officials, at the meeting. Now, all of this is meant to jumpstart some sort of diplomatic movement toward anything that would get things going in the Gaza Strip, where, as I mentioned, in October 2025, that deal ended the war but not the fighting. There has been a serious diplomatic impasse that has prevented any further movement.
Matt, Kushner arrived in Israel earlier today now to meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu. And this is where this gets tough. He's rejected President Trump's Gaza peace plan, and Kushner is really trying to persuade him to get this over the line at this point. Has the Prime Minister showed any willingness to reconsider?
The short answer is no, not yet at least. But the visit from Kushner could change all that. We don't really know. But the fact of the matter is that the Prime Minister rejected President Trump's 15-point plan that also basically was eking past what had been agreed upon in October 2025, trying to say that Hamas would completely disarm. But Benjamin Netanyahu is facing an entirely different political imperative. He faces what could be the most consequential elections of his political life coming up in October, and he has been desperate to push back criticism that he is constantly capitulating to President Trump. So now would be a pretty good time for him to show the Israeli public that he's taking a stand on Gaza.
Matt, despite these negotiations, Israel has continued its airstrikes on Gaza. What's the latest on the ground?
Well, the situation there remains very, very poor. Most of the population remains living in tents and partially destroyed homes. While there is aid that's going in, much more so than before the war was concluded back in October 2025, it still isn't up to the levels that aid agencies and Palestinian leaders say is necessary for that population of more than 2 million people. And there are still heavy restrictions on aid and other things, people going in and out of the Gaza Strip. The Israelis still control more than half of Gaza and have said they want to control even more.
All right, Matt Bradley from Tel Aviv for us. Thanks, Matt. Well, now to developing news on the war in Ukraine, the latest in a series of strikes targeting Russian territory. NBC News International correspondent Claudia Lavanga joins us now to take us around the world in 60 seconds. Claudia, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. Well, that's right. Russian authorities on Monday say at least 7 people were killed and 9 others were injured in a Ukrainian drones attack in the region of Belgorod. Now, this comes a day after another person was killed and 3 others were injured in a separate Ukrainian drone attack in the Moscow region this time. Ukraine is also reportedly trying to hit Russia's economy with its drones attack. Since July, it has been targeting the warehouses of the country's biggest online retailer, Wildberries, causing billions of dollars in damage and lost merchandise and sending shockwaves across consumers in Russia's economy. Let's go now to Indonesia, where the death toll from Saturday's 7.7 earthquake rose to at least 68. The powerful earthquake caused the damage and collapse of hundreds of buildings, the displacement of thousands of people, power outages and landslides across the country. While the search and rescue operation continues, thousands of people slept outdoors overnight for fear of aftershocks. And let's end this tour of the world in Vilnius, the capital of Lithuania, where 150 corgis competed in the annual race dedicated to this lovely dog breed. Corgis from all over the world, including the United States, competed in several categories, including the smartest nose and the loudest bark. But the highlight of the competition was, of course, the race. Well, the top dog in that category was an American corgi called Gustav the Girl Dog, followed by another U.S. entrant, Mr. Corgington, who finished a close second. Now, Savannah, I'm surprised that nobody called their corgis Queen Elizabeth, because, of course, they were famously her favorite breed.
Absolutely. Oh, that was fun, Claudio. Thanks for that cute video this morning. Appreciate it. We'll see you in a bit. Coming up on Morning News Now, cases of a potentially deadly bacteria on the rise in the U.S.
We have to move quickly. Sometimes it can, within hours or even one day, a person can lose a limb. It's a pretty serious infection.
When we return, the warning from health officials and what you can do to protect yourself. We'll be right back. We are back now with a new health warning for anyone heading to the beach. Officials in Louisiana are sounding the alarm after 5 deaths from this year from a dangerous flesh-eating bacteria once found mainly along the Gulf Coast. Cases that were now being reported as far north as New England. NBC News Chief Environmental Affairs Correspondent Ann Thompson reports.
This is prime time for America's coasts, but in the warm waters lurks a hidden danger. the naturally occurring bacteria Vibrio vulnificus, which can cause flesh-eating infections. It puts 17-year-old Josiah Thompson in the hospital this summer after he went swimming with a cut off the coast of Niceville, Florida, says his mom, Tirza.
How big was the scratch on Josiah's leg?
It was a nick. It was a very scary experience.
Josiah needed 2 surgeries to stop the infection.
Thankfully, we felt like there was no bone affected. It was all soft tissue.
There are 80,000 cases a year, reports the CDC, and the infections kill 1 in 5 people. This year, Florida reports 2 deaths, Louisiana 5. There, officials urge beachgoers to take precautions. You get Vibrio swimming in salt or brackish water with an open cut or eating raw or undercooked shellfish.
We have to move quickly. Sometimes it can, within hours or even one day, a person can lose a limb. It's a pretty serious infection.
Symptoms include fever, chills, and a painful rash. Once mainly in the Gulf Coast, cases now happen as far north as New England, and climate change heating the oceans is thought to be why. Josiah is now back in school with just a scar and a summer memory no one wants. Ann Thompson, NBC News.
Well, for more on this, let's bring in NBC News medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar. Hi, Dr. Azar. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. So how easy is it to contract this bacteria?
Well, it's not altogether that difficult, Savannah. So the 2 ways that the bacteria can enter the body are either by ingesting raw or undercooked seafood, as well as having an open wound and swimming in those brackish waters where the Vibrio, it's sort of their natural habitat. But there are a couple of medical conditions that are considered to place people at higher risk, and those include people with a history of liver disease, cancer, people who are immunocompromised, people with diabetes, for example, HIV, a certain blood condition called thalassemia, and interestingly, people who take medications to suppress their stomach acid or have had certain gastric procedures that also can impact digestion and reduce stomach acid, because that stomach acid is actually a natural barrier for people if they do ingest it orally.
Doctor, if you wouldn't mind, I think we just got your hair on your mic a little bit. No, you're working from home. If you could just move that off your mic for audio purposes, but also so Ann mentioned some of the symptoms in her piece, but can they differ depending on how you're exposed, if it is because of that cut, or if it is, for example, eating contaminated shellfish like she mentioned?
Yeah, so what's interesting is that, the mildest cases, let's say if you do eat undercooked or raw seafood and you get a gastrointestinal illness, you might have nausea, vomiting, some stomach cramps, maybe a low-grade fever, a wound infection, of course, we'll talk about in a moment, sort of redness and swelling around a cut. But what's interesting, and the symptoms can be very much the same if the bacteria, either from ingesting orally or by a cut, enters your bloodstream. And that's when you can get those fevers and chills and blistering skin lesions and a very low blood pressure. That can be a harbinger of potentially moving on and progressing to something called sepsis, which is, life-threatening.
And tell us about, if you are exposed to that cut or scratch, what that sort of wound infection looks like.
Right. So what we always, want people to look at is at the area of the wound, at the cut. If you see expanding redness, warmth, swelling, discoloration, any drainage of fluids, and especially if that's happening quickly over, 12 to 24 hours after swimming in those brackish waters or exposure to that kind of water, you would want to seek medical attention immediately.
Dr. Azar, finally, how important is it to get treatment quickly if you think that something could be wrong?
Yeah, so that's the thing. So again, Savannah, if it's just gastrointestinal and mild, we're talking about hydration. That's the key thing. If it's a wound infection, antibiotics immediately, as urgently and quickly as possible. And as Ann pointed out in her case, in many cases, surgery is required to remove the infected tissue, before it progresses to, again, that bacteremia and potentially sepsis. So it's very treatable, but urgent medical care is definitely important in those cases of those rapidly expanding wound infections.
All right, Dr. Azar, thanks as always. Well, coming up, for richer or for poorer, an eye-opening new study shows just how hard it is for couples to communicate when it comes to money. But experts say talking finance could be the key to a happy romance. Our friend and financial guru, Brooke De Palma, is here to go through all the receipts with us. Next, you're watching Morning News Now. They're back now with a new survey revealing that money may still be one of the toughest topics for couples to talk about. Fidelity found nearly half of couples surveyed avoid talking about finances to prevent arguments, and 70% didn't have a full picture of their partner's finances until after moving in together. So what is behind this money communication gap? Let's bring in Brooke De Palma, senior reporter and on-air correspondent at Yahoo Finance. Brooke, good morning. So let's just start with the why there. I mentioned some of that kind of like avoiding an argument, but I mean, if you're planning to build a life with someone, seems like it's probably a good idea. So how's this happening?
It's important to start those conversations right now, whether in the early innings of a relationship, maybe even before you start to move in. As you had mentioned, it seems like most of these conversations aren't happening until after you move in. But most people just start with the initial fear that they're going to argue about finances, that they're not going to be on the same page. And so that's why it's important to start those conversations early on. Also, there might be some shame associated about some debt or perhaps student loans that you might have or money mistakes. Maybe you made an investment that didn't go so well. And so be open and honest with your partner. Also, fear of financial decisions. I mean, think about it. If you're joining someone within this journey, it's important to take a look at your budget, take a look at maybe your personal saving habits or your personal spending habits. There might be some lifestyle changes that you have to make there. And so these are just tough conversations that you initially have to open up.
I know there's some generational differences here, too. What'd you see?
Right. What's interesting is that younger generations are prioritizing personal financial boundaries. We see when it comes to joint accounts, it seems like Gen Z, the least amount of Gen Z has joint accounts. When you look at boomers, more and more have those joint accounts. And it really is this sort of generational divide. You think about Gen Z, more and more females are entering the workforce. Perhaps that has to do with it. Also, millennials, when you think about their likelihood of joint accounts, maybe they're moving into marriage decisions. They're trying to save for a wedding, so they're opening up those joint accounts. They're opening up a joint account in order to save for a house. And then, of course, Gen X, saving around families. And boomers, just more traditional there. They're more likely to have a joint account because they're doing more traditional finance practices.
What kinds of issues come up, though, when you're not talking about this?
Yeah, well, if you leave your partner out of the dark, it could lead sort of this misunderstanding about where exactly you are, open and honestly, about your financial well-being. And so that could mean that maybe your partner doesn't know about all of that debt that you have or that extra credit card. Also, in addition to that, it could lead to different conversations about your goals, your lifestyle, or your goal setting. And so that could be the difficult part there. Maybe you don't have the same goals in mind. Maybe you aren't looking to get married. You aren't looking to save for a house. Maybe you want to rent forever. And so it's important to open up and have those conversations now about your income, your saving practices, your debt, and also those goals that you might have in the next 5 to 10 years.
Here's another a specific interesting number in here. 58% of couples surveyed said they don't contribute equally to household finances. Now, is that causing a problem, or is it more just like, okay, we agree that this is how we do things, and then that's how you avoid a problem in that situation?
Well, I think that's the latter. I think agreeing to saying that, hey, we're not bringing in an equal amount of money, but ultimately finding the solution there and saying, okay, how can we come together? How can we each have our own separate financial well-being, but also contribute in a way that makes sense for us? Often when you avoid the topic about the fact that maybe we don't make the same amount of money, that leads to resentment. It leads to guilt around maybe being the lower income earner, and also leads to just more difficult conversations later on down the line. Perhaps in the future, the situation might flip. And so what will you do in that case scenario? Plan that out now, and that ultimately will help you build a better foundation for the future.
All right, Brooke De Palma, interesting one. Thank you so much. Well, now let's get to a viral Groupon deal that promises a round-trip flight and hotel stay for as little as $200. There, of course, though, is a catch. You have no idea where you're going until after you've paid. NBC News correspondent Ryan Chandler spoke to some buyers who scored their dream trips and others who were not so lucky.
It's the ultimate travel gamble.
We're going to Greece.
You pick your departure airport and some rough dates. Shell out as little as $200.
Drum roll. Your girl is going to New Orleans.
And 72 hours later, a stranger reveals your destination.
Anywhere but Florida, please.
Those willing to play vacation roulette and buy Groupon's mystery getaway could score a trip to faraway places like Singapore, Greece, or Hawaii.
7 days in Portugal, and this was only $2.99 per person.
Or they could land on a Frontier flight to Phoenix.
He was like, you can go to Arizona.
Mystery Vacations, the company that partners with Groupon to run these trips, told NBC News they've sold close to $2 million worth in the past month. Americans are eager for a deal, with airfares up roughly 25% compared to last year.
Like, is this real?
Orlando-based Melinda and Joey Lemond are headed to Paris and London for 7 nights.
We're still hearing the words that we're going to get to go to London and Paris and stuff, but we're still like, where's the catch? Where's the catch? You know, for $200 a piece, this is crazy.
And Chicago-based Kristen Lamps won a trip to Puerto Rico.
The fact that I got like the bigger one was, I was like, oh my God, I never won anything. So I was super excited about that.
But not everyone got so lucky.
They're making money off of people.
LA-based Kimber Bowman says her experience left her feeling like the whole thing was a scam, and she didn't even end up taking her trip.
It was not a value at all. Because when I actually went back to look up the cost of what I purchased, it's Frontier in Arizona in August, 105-degree average temperature. Of course, your flight is $66, right? That makes sense. But then the hotel, $70 a night. It would have been cheaper for me to book it on my own.
Groupon tells us out of every 2,000 vouchers, 6 are for 7 nights in Europe or Asia, while over 99% are for 2-night stays in the U.S. They say, we print that number so nobody buys a fantasy.
We want to do everything right to manage expectations. Whenever we do get a complaint, we do try to resolve it.
But despite some bad experiences, travel agent Tammy Wells said the promise of any adventure with minimal planning was enough to convince her to book the package twice.
They're definitely not a scam. You just have to set your expectations realistically of what you're getting.
So as Americans hunt for those golden travel deals, many are happy to test their luck and see where it lands.
We are in really difficult financial times, so the promise of maybe getting that lucky strike, it sounds good.
Ryan Chandler, NBC News.
Are you doing it?
Okay, it's kind of interesting for $200 to give it a shot.
Right.
But yeah, let's get real.
I do not want to go to Arizona in August on a Frontier Airlines flight at all. So the odds are maybe not in your favor, but if you're gambling and you got some time and you don't know where to go, might as well give it a shot.
Exactly.
All right.
That's interesting.
All right. A years-long debate about surfaces is resurfacing for football fans. What's better, turf or grass? For the summer's World Cup, stadiums that typically use turf had to put in grass instead. Most NFL players say that's what they prefer, yet only half of the league's teams actually play on grass. NBC News national correspondent Aaron Gilchrist takes a closer look.
After 3 years and more than $2 billion, the Buffalo Bills' brand new stadium is now open. With seating for 60,000 and a big change on the field, grass instead of turf. Something tight end Dawson Knox praised at practice.
I think I can speak for literally every player on this team. We love the grass.
Right now, 14 NFL stadiums have turf. The other 16, including Highmark Stadium, have grass.
I believe that we will win.
The debate over fields fueled by this summer's World Cup, which saw 7 NFL stadiums rip out their turf and install grass. And ahead of the soccer final, some American football players posting online with the hashtag worth the cost, questioning why grass is a winning play for soccer, but not necessarily for football.
When you see the World Cup stuff, they only play on grass, and a certain type of grass. The NFL should just provide a grass for everybody.
The Players Union pushing for teams to convert turf to natural grass, saying artificial turf is significantly harder on the body. But the NFL's field director, Nick Pappas, says every field is unique, and he puts safety first.
We are not seeing a severity of injury or more frequent injury on turf or grass. It is the same year over year for the past 3 to 5 seasons.
And last year, the league introduced new standards for traction and firmness for turf, grass, or hybrid fields that every NFL stadium has to meet by 2028.
How do you respond to what seems to be a growing demand from players to play on natural grass?
Yeah, the world may be hearing from the players right now, but we hear from the players regularly. We're always trying to develop our standards.
Jacob Robinson writes about the NFL for The Athletic.
What do you make of the World Cup factor that plays into the resurgence of the debate.
So there's the images of these teams taking grass out of the fields to put the turf back in that I think really hit a nerve with some players.
Robinson says the future may be in fields that are a mix of grass and turf.
The grass fields will likely stay that way. The turf fields we might see continue to evolve towards that middle ground.
With the regular season just weeks away, the debate over a level playing field still up in the air. Aaron Gilchrist, NBC News, New York.
Coming up on Morning News Now, a daddy-daughter duo making history at the finish line.
Connecting with your kids, doing something that you love with them. I think that's so important as like a parent to show them that, we're capable of doing hard things.
Up next, we'll introduce you to the dad who took his daughter for a morning stroll straight into the record books. Don't run off. This is Morning News Now.
We finished this hour with a world record run that looked more like a stroll.
A 30-year-old dad ran the Guardian Mile race in Cleveland while pushing his daughter in a stroller. NBC News Now anchor Hallie Jackson has more on this father-daughter duo.
And they are off.
Steven Biebelhausen is nonstop.
The stroller is well ahead.
You see him there going for it at the Cleveland Guardian Mile race with only 2 weeks of training under his belt.
It's a fun local race. I'd heard of it. I'd never run it myself.
Look at how much fun this baby's having.
His precious cargo?
Look at the legs.
That baby thinks it's running.
That's Steven's 1-year-old daughter, Blake.
This baby is going nuts. This baby's legs are going turbo mode.
She's up well past her bedtime, but like her dad, not ready to slow down.
The baby knows that this is utter domination.
The baby's been training.
Zooming ahead.
See that hand switch? That was seamless.
Their competition nowhere in sight.
Here he comes down the final stretch.
And at the finish line,
I believe he has shattered the outright stroller mile world record.
a world record shattered.
My goodness.
That was incredible.
Steven setting a new one for running a mile while pushing a stroller in just 4 minutes and 17 seconds.
My God, what a performance.
For this proud dad, the race was never about the medal.
Connecting with your kids, doing something that you love with them. I think that's so important as like a parent to show them that, you know, we're capable of doing hard things.
And even though Blake may not remember her big day, this father-daughter bond will last a lifetime.
I'm so excited to show her all these videos and interviews in like 10 years time. I love her so much, and I'm so happy that she could be a part of this with me. I'm just so excited to watch her grow up.
Hallie Jackson, NBC News.
I'm surprised that kid's hair isn't like standing straight up. It was going so fast.
Okay, also that mile time without the stroller.
Without the stroller. Imagine if you take it out. Yeah,
exactly.
Even better. All right, that's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us, though. The news continues right now. Good morning. Thanks for kicking off your work week with us. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, a dangerous split screen of severe weather battering millions from the Atlantic to the Pacific. In Hawaii, an unrelenting Lala pushing emergency crews to the brink, unleashing devastating winds and driving rain on the islands there. While in hard-hit Indiana, folks are waking up to unimaginable scenes of carnage after days of seemingly endless storms, leaving communities exhausted and underwater. And it looks like Mother Nature is not done yet. We got your full forecast in a moment. Breaking overnight, a sobering shock to the world of entertainment. Hayden Panettiere, who became a household name through shows like Heroes and Nashville, found dead in South Carolina at the age of 36. What police are saying about her death and how Hollywood is reacting. Plus, more tariff troubles could be on tap this week. Negotiators from both the U.S. and Canada racing to come to a deal, all to avoid a 50% markup on northern goods like wine, even hockey sticks, before a Wednesday deadline. What that might mean for your bottom line coming up. We begin this hour in Hawaii with the devastating impact following a weekend of storms there. The once powerful Hurricane Lala is now a tropical storm. Not before it slammed the Big Island and Maui with relentless rain and winds over the weekend.
The system itself may be losing strength this morning, but the danger is still far from over. NBC News national correspondent Morgan Chesky is in Hawaii with the latest. Morgan, good morning.
Yeah, it is a tough morning for so many here on the Big Island, where thousands remain without power amid the aftermath of Hurricane Lala that has knocked down trees and plenty of power lines all across these islands. And today, officials are giving us a better glimpse as to what Hawaii has truly endured at the hands of Lala. saying that there are still communities at this point that remain completely cut off.
This morning, emergency crews across Hawaii pushed to the brink. Lala passing by just south of the island as a Category 1 hurricane, unleashing drenching rains and damaging winds. This driver capturing a frightening close call as the storm toppled a tree right onto her car. The governor confirming more than 100 homes damaged or destroyed, prompting officials to issue a major disaster declaration. The storm, which weakened to a tropical storm overnight, dumping more than 3 feet of rain over the weekend. Hawaii's National Guard saving 2 paramedics trapped inside their own truck before it, too, was washed away. All that water wreaking havoc island-wide.
Oh, my God.
Swift currents washing out roads, water and debris overpowering highways. In Hilo, floods churning, and drone video capturing roads completely submerged. The highest rainfall total from this storm, more than 42 inches along the Big Island's northeast coast. Winds there reaching more than 70 miles an hour, ripping roofs off buildings, and thousands remain without power. Back on the Big Island, Wendell Causey spent Sunday clearing down trees after riding out the storm alongside his granddaughters, Kailea and Kella.
What were you telling the grandkids as this one moved in?
Yeah, they kept asking, is this the storm? Is this the storm? Yes, but trying to keep it so that it's not so scary.
Did you take care of the baby with the storm?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great.
After losing their home to Hurricane Iniki back in 1992, the family grateful to have survived a rare second Hawaiian hurricane.
And this morning, officials have expressed their gratitude for the fact that Lala's path did shift, sparing a direct hit on the islands. However, they're urging residents to please steer clear of flooded areas and those damaged zones until crews can get back there and get a better assessment as to what this storm has truly left behind. We'll send it back to you.
All right, Morgan, thank you.
The weather is also a major story in Indiana, which is dealing with historic and deadly flooding. Days of relentless rain and storms over the weekend left neighborhoods underwater, forced hundreds of people to evacuate their homes. The raging currents were even strong enough to rip apart roads and bridges. And this morning, as the water finally recedes, people are left surveying the unimaginable damage. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa has been on the ground through it all. She joins us now live in Indianapolis with the latest. Maggie, good morning.
Joe, good morning. Yeah, you talk about that water receding. It actually has gone down drastically, which is great news. You can kind of see some water still standing back there. But where I'm standing right now was totally submerged just like 12 hours ago. State officials say these historic storms and floods taking at least 7 lives here in Indiana over the last week. And as you'll see, just leaving a stunning path of destruction. After a days-long deluge, people in Indiana this morning waking up to a devastating reality. Historic weekend flooding swallowed entire neighborhoods in Indianapolis and destroying homes.
I'm going to lose everything, and I just paid my house off.
Our team witnessing countless rescues.
I was trying to put stuff up on tables, chairs, and then these guys showed up and to rescue me, and I had to go.
The water making transportation difficult, bridges collapsing, and roads cut off. First responders ordering residents out of this apartment complex Sunday after raging floodwaters destroyed the road around it.
This is nuts.
It follows a week's worth of storms that turned deadly across multiple states. Among the victims, 19-year-old Matthew Morey. Morey's family confirms search crews found his body in the raging Mississinawa River Saturday, days after the incoming Purdue freshman jumped off a bridge with friends.
The water line is halfway up the couch.
With water receding, career ICU nurse Luisa Senor showing us the muck and mud caking her floors, bathtub, and home. When you saw how your home looked, how did that hit you?
It was what I had expected. It was difficult. It's just stuff, it can all be replaced.
So many hard conversations over the last week. President Trump green-lighting FEMA aid for people here in Indiana. And we've talked to a lot of people whose homes were flooded and they don't have flood insurance. We've also talked to some who do have flood insurance, but many of them telling us they're learning hard truths about how many of their possessions are not covered under their plans. So suffice it to say that government aid is needed.
All right, Maggie, thank you so much.
We've got more now on Tropical Storm Lala in Hawaii, as well as that severe weather in the Midwest.
NBC meteorologist Dylan Dreyer joins us with your morning news now forecast. Hey, Dylan.
Good morning. Lots of weather going on. So let's focus in the flood watch. And we did have some flash flood warnings in this part of the country, including West Virginia, stretching up into Indiana, over into Illinois. And it's more because of the river flooding. They are at or above flood stage. So the orange dots here where we're seeing some minor flooding off the banks of those rivers. But some areas of red, especially in and around Indianapolis, is where we do have moderate flooding. So low-lying areas close to those rivers still have the threat of some of that flooding. As for severe storms today, there's an area across the upper Midwest and also through the southeast into the Carolinas where we could see large hail and damaging winds as these storms continue to push eastward and kind of pop up around the area. Same goes for tomorrow, too, including Omaha over into Iowa, even just north of Chicago where we could see some of those stronger storms. Additional rainfall about 1 to 2 inches. But again, it doesn't take a lot of rain to exacerbate some of the flooding that we're seeing off those rivers in especially Indiana. Let's focus on Tropical Storm Lala now. This was the hurricane that just rocked Hawaii. Now most of the wet weather with it and the wind is out over the water. This is going to become less and less of a threat. Even though it should re-strengthen into a Category 1 hurricane, it is no longer a threat to land. Heat is going to be a big story in the southwest, also in the southeast. Not just the heat, but the humidity too. Heat indices will be well above 100 degrees. Memphis will feel like 111 today. And this is going to continue, unfortunately, all week long. Atlanta's going to feel like 99 tomorrow. 110 is your feels like temperature in Pensacola. And here you go. We're looking at those triple-digit temperatures over in Waco, Baton Rouge, close to it. But when you factor in the humidity, this is what it's going to feel like. And that just takes you to Friday. This weekend, not a whole lot of relief with the heat and the humidity sticking around. Back to you.
All right, Dylan, thank you. This morning, we are learning more about the shocking death of actress Hayden Panettiere. In a statement overnight, her father revealed her passing, calling it a, quote, unimaginable loss. Just 36 years old, Panettiere was a childhood star who then appeared in hit shows like Heroes in Nashville. Recently, she opened up about her mental health struggles. NBC News correspondent Steve Patterson joins us now with a look back at her life and her career. Steve, good morning.
You know, Joe, it's news that truly shocked the entertainment industry. Panettiere has been part of Hollywood for so long, with major acting roles in shows and movies, starting when she was just a small child. Now, police are investigating, and her fellow actors are paying tribute after the star passed away this weekend at just the age of 36.
This morning, an investigation is underway into the shocking death of actress Hayden Panettiere. Overnight, police in Greenville, South Carolina, saying they responded to a report of an unresponsive female, later identified as Panettiere. She was pronounced dead at the scene, authorities not yet providing a cause of death. Overnight, her father calling her tragic passing an unimaginable loss, writing she was an incredible light and a force of nature.
But you're still weak on the left side.
Panettiere was a working actress most of her life, first stealing the spotlight in Remember the Titans.
Why do you dress so weird? Ow.
Single coolest thing to happen.
But it was 2006 when Panettiere shot to global fame in the hit NBC show Heroes.
This is Claire Bennett.
As a high school cheerleader with healing powers.
The girl, you have to save her. What girl? The cheerleader.
Stopping by today to talk about the phenomenon.
I think it's such an incredible collaborative group show.
Later, she took the role of an ambitious young country star for 6 seasons in the musical drama series Nashville, earning 2 Golden Globe nominations. In recent years, Panettiere was open about her personal struggles. She became a mother in 2014 with her then partner, professional boxer Vladimir Klitschko, later giving him full custody of the child after 4 years, recently sharing that she'd been struggling with addiction and postpartum depression.
That's why I turned to substances, because the anxiety that I started having the panic attacks that I started having.
Also coping with the death of her brother Jansen in 2023 from heart complications.
When you lose somebody that you saw in all the important moments in your life, it just rocks your world.
In the months before her death, Hayden seemingly on a more positive path, promoting her new book and sharing interactions with fans. Now, Hollywood remembering the young star, Viola Davis posting a moving tribute, writing, "I wish the world had more time with you."
Meanwhile, the Greenville Police Department said overnight that a preliminary investigation hasn't indicated any signs of foul play or suspicious circumstances. The department said that it was an acquaintance who notified Panettiere and placed that call to 911. Joe.
All right, Steve, thank you so much.
Well, oil prices are on the rise this morning as Iranian strikes on ships in the Strait of Hormuz continue to slow shipping through that critical waterway. This comes as Iran is telling President Trump to, quote, stop indulging in delusions after he suggested he would make the strait a U.S. territory. The president is also facing backlash at home over conditions on the USS Abraham Lincoln. That's an aircraft carrier that has played a crucial role in the war. NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley is in Tel Aviv with the latest. Hey, Matt, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Savannah. So we just heard again from President Trump speaking to Fox News, talking about how if Oman were to make a deal with the Iranians, they would attack Oman. Meanwhile, we're seeing that this is the very last day of a supposed memorandum of understanding's prescription to see further negotiations for 60 days that would come to some sort of comprehensive peace deal. But so far, we haven't seen those negotiations moving forward. Here's our report. This morning, the Trump administration responding to growing attention to conditions for sailors deployed in the war with Iran. After family from some service members aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln raised alarm about deteriorating conditions on board the aircraft carrier, which has been at sea for a record of more than 240 consecutive days. And multiple U.S. officials told NBC News there have been concerning man-overboard incidents. CENTCOM Commander Bradley Cooper visiting the ship, later acknowledging that long service at sea is, quote, uniquely challenging and tough, but saying the Lincoln has, quote, the lowest number of cases related to mental health of any active carrier. And in a Wall Street Journal op-ed calling stories about issues on board, quote, old news. The Pentagon confirming last week that one sailor did go overboard on the ship and is now receiving care. The USS George Washington now steaming toward the Middle East to relieve the Lincoln, which is set to return to San Diego, while Democrats have continued to call for more information.
Deep problem here is that this administration did not plan for this war.
President Trump dismissing concerns about long deployments in the region over the weekend.
No. Not nearly long enough.
While Iran has said no talks are ongoing, the president referencing a U.S. takeover of the key waterway at the center of the diplomatic struggle.
Pretty soon I'll be declaring the Hormuz Strait a territory of the United States.
Iran fired back with a joke. A prominent member of parliament mocking the president for hiding in a catering vehicle at an airport in Turkey to avoid an Iranian security threat. The U.S. president ought to worry about his own security, wrote Ibrahim Azizi, before he ends up hiding in a food truck.
Matt, also President Trump's son-in-law and U.S. envoy Jared Kushner is in the Middle East to push for the next phase of the president's 20-point peace plan in Gaza. What do we know so far about his time there?
Yeah, well, it sounds as though that he already met yesterday in Cairo with the newly minted head of Hamas, Dr. Khalil al-Hayya. This could be an unprecedented meeting in terms of the height of the diplomats involved. Jared Kushner, President Trump's son-in-law, who has been more or less anointed as a top diplomat. And then today, Jared Kushner met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, again, trying to resuscitate this Gaza deal that so far has been totally gridlocked by a diplomatic impasse.
All right, Matt, thank you.
U.S. and Canadian negotiators are in talks to try and avert President Trump's new 50% tariff on some Canadian goods before they go into effect midnight Wednesday.
The tariffs would cover nearly $20 billion worth of Canadian goods, or just over 5% of Canada's exports to the U.S.
Investopedia's editor-in-chief and chief business editor of People Inc., Caleb Silver, joins us now for more on this. So first of all, just remind us how we got to this point and why the president is threatening these newest tariffs here against Canada.
Yeah, cheese,
whiskey and softwood lumber, basically, but an unfair trade agreement. Yeah, the big stuff. But this has been going on for a while. Even though the U.S. and Canada have a trade agreement through the U.S.-Mexico trade agreement, that has not been in place really since President Trump put these tariffs on Canada. Back on July 20th, they announced 50% tariffs on key Canadian imports. That includes softwood lumber, that includes auto parts, and that includes steel and aluminum, 25% on autos. And if they don't reach a negotiation or an agreement by Wednesday night, you're going to see 50% tariffs across the board on a lot of those goods.
So, Caleb, what kind of impact do we see this having on the American consumer, given that list?
Yeah, well, we already have these tariffs on a lot of these goods, particularly softwood lumber. Softwood lumber, that's like pine lumber we use for construction. We use that for roof decking. We use that for building homes. That's been in place for a while, and steel and aluminum. But automakers have been suffering from these 25% tariffs. A lot of U.S. automakers have their autos built in Canada, or parts of those autos built in Canada and then shipped down to the U.S. On the flip side, Canada has been putting tariffs on U.S. whiskey, right, on U.S. cheese. But the complicated thing is Canada's 10 provinces, and they all don't agree on what the tariff negotiation should be. So the U.S. and Canada are in a tricky place. They've been 3 times in the past week, no agreement yet.
Could something like this actually push inflation higher? And as the Fed gets set to meet again and figure out what to do with interest rates, how could this factor in?
Yeah, this is yet another thing. But again, a lot of these tariffs have been in place, and we're talking about $28 billion worth of goods or so. So it's not going to actually push inflation that much higher. It's just going to keep inflation at these levels, especially for those key goods. And then you have small businesses that do a lot of business with Canada, or Canadian businesses that do a lot with the U.S. caught in the middle of all of this. They're dealing with higher costs and no end to the battle between these two countries on what the tariffs should be and when they should come off.
So what do we think? A deal reached before Wednesday's deadline or no?
Potentially. It's a lot of this has to do with American whiskey, believe it or not, which is off the shelves in most of Canada, except for a couple of provinces. So there's a tight negotiation happening there. But the softwood lumber and the autos and the steel and aluminum, those are the key issues to focus on. Those prices have been elevated due to inflation in general, but mostly because of these tariffs. If those don't come off, higher prices for those key components, aluminum, steel, and softwood lumber.
All right, Caleb Silver, good to have you with us. Thank you.
Well, President Trump wants to take his White House ballroom fight to the Supreme Court.
The president's now asking the High Court to weigh in after a federal appeals court ordered construction on that project to stop by the end of the week.
NBC News Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles joins us now from the White House. Hey, Ryan, so what exactly is the Trump administration asking the Supreme Court to do?
Well, they want the Supreme Court to overturn a lower court ruling that would require the administration to seek congressional approval before moving forward and finishing this ballroom project, which the administration says is now about 65% of the way through. This after 2 different appeals courts said that the White House had to stop construction except for the underground military facility because they lacked that congressional approval. Now, the White House is pushed back, saying that this is actually all a military structure, that the ballroom is just part of a bigger military project. They released renderings this week that showed different viewpoints of it, including a drone port on top of the ballroom facility. So the White House hoping that the Supreme Court will allow them to continue on with this project, even though they've been told by the courts that they need to discontinue the above ground construction. Guys, I can tell you already this morning, we've seen those cranes moving. So there is some question as to whether or not the administration is fully complying with this court order.
Ryan, you mentioned the renderings. I know we've seen some more images of what this might look like, assuming it actually is completed. What is it we're seeing?
So a lot of gold, which is not a surprise when it comes to something that Donald Trump is behind. The inside almost entirely gilded in gold. But there's more than just what we're seeing in the ballroom. They're describing the underground facility as being a military facility that would be complete with national security briefing rooms. There would also be medical facilities underneath the ground, in addition to that drone port, which would exist on top of the structure. We've seen this more and more with the White House, the different renovations that the president has implemented, where it seems that each and every time there's a new addition, there's a lot more gold involved. That's exactly what we see being played out with these renderings of what they hope the ballroom will ultimately look like.
Ryan, what happens next? How quickly could the Supreme Court act? What does that mean?
Very soon, Savannah. The Supreme Court actually has to give some sort of ruling by the end of the week because the lower court put a 14-day moratorium on this construction project. So there'll be a short-term avenue for the Supreme Court to weigh in on this, and then a long-term avenue. The short-term would be whether or not the construction can continue while the Supreme Court has time to deliberate this issue. That could come as soon as the end of the week, but it's expected that the Supreme Court will likely take up the issue in a more fulsome way. That could be a much longer process, would require oral arguments, so it could be some time before this issue is completely resolved, guys.
All right, Brian Nobles, thank you so much.
We are back with the highly anticipated murder trial in the death of hip-hop legend Tupac Shakur. Nearly 30 years after his death, today a jury will hear opening arguments in a Las Vegas courtroom. They'll decide the fate of the man who officials say orchestrated the drive-by killing of Shakur. NBC News legal analyst Misty Maris. Misty, good morning. Let's start with that. Davis's own words. Prosecutors revived the case after he published that book about his time in the Crips back in 2019. It included details about the shooting. How much harder does it make it for the defense? What do we know about the defense's argument here?
Well, so the defense is likely to say that Davis actually engaged in puffery, self-aggrandizement. He wrote this book for money. And so he created a narrative that would actually sell books. It's not really true. Joe, something they have to overcome is that 2008 police interview, which has a lot of similarities to what came out in the book. The defense is likely going to argue that that he was strong-armed. That was a completely separate investigation. And so he falsely confessed to things that he doesn't know anything about. The last piece of this from the defense perspective, Joe, that I think they'll heavily focus on is why now? They're going to want to say this is a 30-year-old murder and prosecutors are just looking to make a speculative case because of its high-profile nature. They just want somebody to blame. So that will all be looped into the defense arguments.
And of course, all they need is just one juror to have reasonable doubt, and then there you go. So in addition to allegedly ordering the hit on Tupac, prosecutors are saying that Davis provided the gun that was used in the shooting. What all do you expect to hear from the prosecution here?
So that matters a lot, Joe, because they're not saying that Davis was the one who actually pulled the trigger. So in order to secure a murder conviction, he has to be part of the criminal conspiracy, meaning he was involved in the planning and commission of the crime. So by providing the gun and being what's been described as the shot caller, that would do the trick if they can prove it. Now, what's funny here, all of the other individuals that were in that car with Davis are no longer living. And usually what you have is a co-conspirator who flips, right, who speaks to police. Here, the person telling on Davis is Davis himself through the words in his book that police interview, as well as other interviews. So the prosecution's case, Davis will be a central figure. Even though he might not take the stand, prosecutors will say, listen to his own words. He's telling you what happened that night, and you should believe him.
You mentioned that key point there that no one else who was in the car is still alive. Despite that, we're going to have a lot of witnesses here. Prosecutors could call anywhere from 35 to 45 witnesses. Who stands out about who's expected to take the stand? Anyone who you think will be especially important or interesting?
Yeah, so I'm taking a look at this witness list, and Suge Knight is still on it, Joe. So remember, Suge Knight was in the car, driving the car with Tupac. Now, he's very publicly said, if you call me, I'm not going to help whoever tries to get me involved in this trial in a media interview. So putting him on the stand, even though he's potentially the only other person with real-time information, could be a risk. You never want to put somebody on the stand if you don't know what they're going to say. You don't want a wild card. Now, somebody else, the co-author of Davis's book, that is going to be an incredibly interesting witness because Davis is going to say, well, he didn't really write it. He had a co-author who did all the writing, and this co-author is going to talk about where the information came from, how much creative control he had over it with regard to the content that specifically relates to Tupac. Another interesting witness is the current governor of Nevada, Joe Lombardo. Now, he was a police officer back then. We also have members of Tupac's family. So this is the prosecutors really putting together the pieces to kind of create the narrative of what was going on at the time, all of these rivalries, and trying to find anybody who might have some information with regard to the investigation, and especially this book, which is a central part of the case.
Fascinating to see the governor on there. Reminder, he has an extensive law enforcement history there. This trial is expected to last about a month. Just overall, what stands out to you most about this case?
So using the defendant's own words and prosecutors arguing, you should believe the defendant. He's a credible guy. That's not what we usually see in a trial. On the flip side, you're going to have the defense saying this book and these interviews, this was just to get money. This is all something that was exaggerated for the purpose of selling books. Now, what I do think is going to be interesting, because that book, the public statements made by Davis, that police interview, that's the crux of the prosecution's case. But I like to look at what they don't have. They don't have the gun. They don't have the car where the shooter was driving. They don't have the car that Davis was allegedly in. Forensic evidence is going to be thin. Remember, this was a 30-year-old crime. So what other actual, more objective evidence is going to support what they're presenting from Davis? This case is going to really rise and fall on Davis and what he said and whether or not the jury believes him. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one unfolds, where you've got an unwitting witness for the prosecution who is the defense.
And the odds that Davis takes the stand are?
Well, I think it would actually put the prosecutors in a bit of a pickle, I think, because, he would get on the stand and prosecutors would have to call him a liar in this instance. He's lying to you right now, jury, because he wants to save his own skin, but he's not lying in the book. I actually think it might create an interesting dynamic. But when it comes to the defense, it's usually a game time decision. Have prosecutors proved their case beyond a reasonable doubt, or do they think that the defendant really needs to take the stand to fill in some holes to help the defense? Again, the other piece of this, Joe, that's interesting, it's up to the defendant himself whether or not he takes the stand. The lawyers just give the advice. So it might be something that's a bit more contemplated after the prosecution wraps up their case. But I actually think it could put prosecutors in a pickle.
Interesting. Misty Maris, good to have you with us. Thank you as always. Coming up, it is a medical marvel that helped change the world of baseball forever. This morning, players and fans alike are remembering the bionic man himself, Tommy John, former MLB pitcher and pioneer off the bump, gone at 83. His life, legacy, and the tributes now pouring in. Next. Back now, the closer look at what's making news in the world of politics this morning, starting with Attorney General Todd Blanche stepping up the fight for access to state voter rolls. NBC News politics reporter Megan Brand has that and some other headlines. Megan, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning. Let's start with Attorney General Todd Blanche. He said in an interview on Meet the Press that there's a possibility that the Justice Department asks the Supreme Court to weigh in on the administration's push to access state voter rolls. So far, the DOJ has lost nearly 24 cases. That comes after President Trump signed an executive order trying to make states turn over voter rolls as part of its effort to investigate what it referred to as deficiencies or anomalies. The executive order was an unusual move because elections are run by the states, not by the federal government. Let's turn next to the Democratic Party, which is grappling with what some are referring to as woke one. That's when progressive politics really accelerated around 2020. Earlier this month, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez quoted a city councilman who had said, quote, woke one was crazy. Now some progressives' past stances from around that time are back in the spotlight as candidates are being pushed ahead of the midterms to explain whether their beliefs have shifted. It also comes as the midterm primary season provides some indications about which direction the party could be leaning in, moderate or progressive. Finally, let's turn to the presidential primary season. Democrats have now officially selected South Carolina as the first nominating state for the party's primaries. After South Carolina comes Nevada. The two states have large Black and Latino voter populations, respectively. But historically, the first two nominating states were Iowa and New Hampshire. Now, this is a big demographics shift for the first two nominating states because Iowa and New Hampshire are predominantly white states. And that's a look at what's making news in politics this morning. Joe?
All right, Megan, thank you so much. This morning, the baseball world is remembering the life of former MLB pitcher Tommy John. New York Yankees say that John passed away over the weekend at the age of 83. Cause of death was not given, although he had been in hospice in previous years. The name Tommy John, might sound familiar to fans out there. He's the namesake behind the revolutionary elbow surgery that helped him keep playing after what could have been a career-ending injury in the 1970s. He lived up to his nickname, the Bionic Man, by playing 14 more seasons seasons in the big leagues. And more than 50 years later, that procedure helps thousands of athletes each year. For more on the baseball icon, let's bring in Keith Law. He's a senior baseball writer at The Athletic. Keith, good morning. We'll talk a little more about the surgery in a moment. I think anyone who hears the name Tommy John, that might be the first thing they think about. But let's talk about the player himself. I mean, he played on several teams across 26 seasons in the MLB. What stands out to you about his career?
Yeah, his on-field legacy is one of longevity. So he was never the best pitcher in baseball, never won a Cy Young Award, but pitched an extraordinarily long time, 26 seasons, as you said, 700 career starts. That's 8th most all time. He is among the leaders in innings pitched in his career as well. If you put him in baseball today, he'd be an anachronism. We simply don't see pitchers with this kind of longevity. We don't see pitchers who pitch this many years. Most pitchers are done by their mid-30s at this point because the sport has changed so much. And he was a sinker baller. In today's sport, there's such a reliance on velocity. But you saw in one of those images, the way he was gripping the ball, that was his two-seam fastball, which was designed to get ground balls rather than to miss bats. Very different than the way most pitchers are brought up and developed in baseball today.
So let's talk about the surgery, because this is an astounding number to me. In 2024, the American Medical Association estimated about 35% of active MLB players had Tommy John surgery at some point in their career. That's more than a third of them. What more can you just tell us about this procedure and how it changed the course of baseball rehab, made it possible for so many pitchers to get over what would be career-ending injuries?
Right. Prior to this surgery, if you tore your UCL, the ligament in the elbow that's replaced in Tommy John surgery, your career was over. And Dr. Frank Jobe had an idea to transplant a ligament from the wrist and use it to completely replace the torn ligament. Remove the torn ligament, take the one from the wrist, tie it through the connection points on each of the bones on either side of the elbow. It took John about 2 years of rehab before he could return to pitching. And at the time, it was revolutionary. Now we treat it as it's almost ordinary, I think a little bit too cavalierly, but pitchers can have the surgery and often return to competitive pitching inside of a year. We see pitchers even have the surgery more than once in their career and still be able to return, still be able to pitch as starters. And given that I cover the draft as a huge part of my job, when an amateur pitcher, high school or college, has had Tommy John surgery, it's not even considered that much of a black mark against them, because I think teams have come to see this surgery as routine and realize that most pitchers, not all, but most pitchers do come back successfully from the operation.
We only have a few seconds left here, but how did Tommy John feel about being the namesake of this surgery? Did he take pride in it, or what were his thoughts about this?
I think he did. He seemed to enjoy talking about it, at least. And in my recollections, he gave a lot of credit to Dr. Jobe as well. I've always found it odd that we named the surgery after the patient, not after the doctor who pioneered the operation.
That is a valid point, but too late. That ship has sailed. So, yes. Right. Keith Law, good to have you with us. Appreciate you helping us look back there. Now to Georgia, where a restaurant is changing the lives of teens who've had contact with the juvenile justice system, giving them vital training and a new outlook on life. Reporter Caitlin Ross from our affiliate in Atlanta has that story.
Welcome to Cafe Momentum. Have you ladies ever been here before?
To guests walking in, this is more than a restaurant.
Empanadas.
It's a place where every meal helps serve up a second chance.
Would that be all for you ladies?
Cafe Momentum is a nonprofit restaurant with a mission to invest in teens who are building a different future.
They help us with our life skills, give us 24/7 case management, put us in the workforce, and try to mentor us into the right paths.
For 16-year-old Zayden, it's where someone finally invested in him.
I just feel like a family here, like someplace I can just come and just chill. I don't really just look at it as a job.
Because this isn't just a job. It's proof that one mistake doesn't have to define the rest of your life.
My judge really didn't. Basically just a third chance, because I messed up 2 times before that, and she just gave me a second chance. And on the third time, this when I came to Cafe Momentum.
Cafe Momentum is a nonprofit restaurant.
A lot of opportunities here.
That hires teens ages 15 to 19 who've been involved with the juvenile justice system. Alongside restaurant training, they're surrounded with mentors, counseling, and support designed to help them build a different future.
We can help you with your GED. We have mental health services here for you on site. So I feel as if we're giving them that hope.
During the year-long internship, they learn every job in the restaurant.
What's inside that pasta? What's inside this rotini pasta?
This is going to be a red sauce.
But the biggest lesson is that they're worth it.
What we share is that you're worth the investment. This Atlanta community comes in here every week, every day, because they're wanting to see this organization be successful, but more importantly, that you're going to be successful.
For Zayden, that investment changed the way he sees himself.
I know my life not just worthless or nothing like that. Like, I got people out here that care about me. If I do something like this, it's going to affect people around me because folks care about me.
And that feeling of knowing someone believes in you can change the way a young person sees their future.
People out here see my worth. We got this image set, and that's not always what it is. Like, we can change. Like, we're not just them criminals.
This restaurant was built on more than recipes and service.
That's one of my favorites on the menu.
Is it?
Yes, ma'am.
It's built on the belief that when you invest in young people, you help change the direction of a life.
Our thanks to Caitlin Ross for that report. And Cafe Momentum is part of a national effort that began in Dallas more than a decade ago. Coming up, he is an everyday American whose day job is anything but average. When Morning News Now returns, our Tom Yamas introduces us to a humble park ranger right here in New York who's working tirelessly to remind Lady Liberty's visitors of a promise that built a nation. That is next. Stay with us. We end this hour by shining a spotlight on a man who came to America as an immigrant and now works to preserve the most famous symbol of the American dream. NBC Nightly News anchor Tom Yamas reports.
What I love about America is the opportunity. This is a place where you can come, and if you're willing to work, I think the sky's the limit.
It's one of America's most iconic landmarks, Lady Liberty, shining over New York's harbor, a poignant reminder of the promise that built America. It's a view park ranger Rennell Langdon says never gets old.
I mean, working at the Statue of Liberty, it's pretty incredible. You know, sailing in on a ferry every morning and seeing the Statue of Liberty, I kind of pinch myself every day.
Langdon immigrated to America from Grenada in 2000, arriving in New York City as a teenager. Then, about a year later, the September 11th attacks would change him and the country forever.
On 9/11, I was in the city. When we went outside, it was just complete chaos and panic, and it really kind of set in that I needed to do something. I needed to serve. That day absolutely changed my life.
Inspired to help protect his new home, Langdon enlisted in the Coast Guard. 4 years later, after finishing his service, Langdon returned to New York, searching for ways to continue giving back to America.
Applying for every federal job I think I qualified for, and the Park Service was the first to give me a chance. So I felt the Park Service in a way sort of chose me.
He started on the ground at Liberty Island, climbing from maintenance worker to park ranger, and now supervisor.
When I put on this uniform, I feel like I'm part of something greater. There are a lot of passionate, dedicated people who's put on this uniform before me. I'm so privileged to have landed in this position.
Langdon also oversees Ellis Island, where more than 12 million people from all over the world entered this country. An immigrant himself, now telling this.
I find it absolutely poetic that I'm here telling the story of millions of people before me. I feel quite privileged being able to work here and help keep that history alive.
Welcome to Statue of Liberty, folks.
For Ranger Langdon, the Statue of Liberty is more than just a landmark. It's a reminder of our responsibility as Americans.
When visitors come here, I hope they feel inspired. I hope they see themselves in her story. And if you look at her, she's obviously not sitting on her pedestal. I like to think that she's taking a step forward. We're standing here on this pedestal of freedom. But like the Statue of Liberty, it's not enough to just sit or stand, but that each of us have a responsibility to move liberty forward. It's something that we all have to participate in.
A beacon of hope, lighting the way for the future of our great nation.
When you look across the harbor, and as long as you see that torch up there and you see the statue standing, I think there's hope for America. I think we find that inspiring.
What a fantastic perspective. Our thanks to Tom Yamas for bringing us that story.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.